what you've just said, I mean, any reasonable person would say you're right.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, the left-wing agenda of the president never goes away. I mean, the gun control agenda, just like the pro-abortion agenda, pick different elements of the far-left agenda. It's been around since the 19-teens, the early part of the 20th century, the progressive era. And, the old saying about them is true. They learn nothing and they forget nothing. So this has been, for more than a century, a political goal of theirs. Look at Obamacare, passed into law in 2010 and ultimately supported by the Supreme Court the following year. This has been something they've been trying to do since 1914. They've been in the Democratic Party platform since 1948. They're very patient and very focused. They've had these goals for a long time. So this gun control and have national health care and other issues, they aren't responding to current events. They're trying to solve a problem of today. They're solving a problem of 100 years ago, and they've just been, bearing away at this agenda for a very long time.
Richard, let's we're down to minutes here, 13 minutes or so. I want to get back to your book, Leading from Behind, The Reluctant President and the Advisors Who Decide for Him. And I want to tell our listeners this book is excellent, Richard. I commend you on a job well done. And by the way, you didn't interview a majority of Republicans for this book. This book takes a critical look at the Obama administration and President Obama's leadership skills, but you, for the most part, interviewed not only Democrats, but also used sources that in general would be favorable to the president. Is that right?
That's right. I virtually everyone I interviewed for this book is an Obama administration official, either current or former. These are loyal Democrats, but who have differences with the majority of the administration on different issues. And then I relied on sources and documents that tend to be pro-Obama, either mainstream media reports, New York Times, Washington Post, and so on, or reports from government agencies at the time when he's president. So I wanted to be as fair-minded as possible, because I was really, in writing this book, Leading from Behind, trying to answer a basic question, which, believe it or not, no one had really looked at, which is, here's a guy, Obama, with almost no leadership experience before being president of the United States. I mean, his U.S. Senate staff was 24 people. His state Senate staff was half a dozen people. He never managed large groups of people. He'd never been the person in the front of the room deciding what had to be done in real time, a leader taking accountability and making decisions. He'd always been the guy at the committee table in the state legislature or in the U.S. Senate, or at the law professor's lectern teaching students. He'd never been a leader. So my question was, how does he do it? How does he act as president of the United States? How does he make big decisions? And because I didn't come at it from an ideological perspective, but from a curiosity perspective, I just wanted to solve this mystery. I thought it was very interesting how someone, Barack Obama's kind of a fish out of water. I mean, how does he suddenly thrust into the biggest leadership job in the world? How does he do it? And what I learned by interviewing people who work with him, most, as I said, mostly Democrats or career government officials, is that he's very aloof. He's very distant. He's not like Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton would read all of the policy papers and then sit around with his aides and debate various options and ideas, sometimes deep into the night over pizza. Obama instead retreats to the White House residence. He's up in the residence on the third floor of the White House with his wife and his children, usually by 6:30 most nights. After dinner and talking to his daughters, he would go and sit in his third floor office by himself for a couple of hours and sort of scribble on memos. And many of the people who work directly for the president in the West Wing of the White House say they often have no idea when he's going to decide an issue or how he'll come down on it. It's often a surprise to them. They get a memo where he's circled option number B or something. So it's a very different kind of presidency.
Well, Richard, one of the things that I was just fascinated to learn is that Obamacare wasn't Obama's idea. Why don't you kind of lead us through what happened, how that happened, and how we got Obamacare when for a long period of time during all the negotiations, nobody even knew if Obama was in favor of it.
Well, that's right. Initially, the president wasn't in favor of it. If you remember, in the 2008 campaign, he didn't really campaign on the issue of national health care. But this is something that Nancy Pelosi wanted to do. You know, they tried to do it in the Truman administration, and they failed. They tried to do it in the Johnson administration. They failed. They tried to do it in the Clinton administration. They failed. And Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House at the time, wanted to be the first to actually get it done, to have national health care in the United States. And on the other side of this debate was Rahm Emanuel. Now, he was the chief of staff for President Obama, and his main aide on healthcare policy, who just left the administration and joined the Brookings Institution, Rahm Emanuel's main aide was Nancy DePaula, and they both said, wait a minute. We worked on, Clinton care in the Clinton years under President Bill Clinton, and it was a political disaster. The Republicans got control of both houses of Congress for the first time in 50 years back in 1994, based on public opposition to nationalizing health care. Let's not do this. We'll lose the Congress. We'll lose the public support. This is a political landmine. But Nancy Pelosi was insistent, and ultimately she persuaded the president that as the first African-American to be president of the United States, he needs to do big things, dramatic things. And nothing is bigger and more dramatic than this, she told him. This is something Democrats have been trying to do for half a century or more, and he should be the one to do it. And there are a lot of key moments in this long 2-year struggle to pass Obamacare where the president thought this was a political loser and sort of tuned out and walked away. Nancy Pelosi had to pursue him, track him down at the White House, sometimes in person, and put a finger in his chest and say, no, Mr. President, I need you to stick around here. I need you to support this. I need you to call Democrats on Capitol Hill who are wavering and bring them back to the fold. So it really should be called Pelosi care. Pelosi was the one who took tremendous political risks, came up with all of the innovative legal maneuvers. They did not pass Obamacare in the normal way that a law is passed in Congress, as you know. It was Pelosi who devised all that. It was Pelosi's energy and courage. Now, you may not agree with her, and I certainly don't, but you've got to admire the courage and the single-mindedness and the leadership of Nancy Pelosi who got this through. But like Moses, she didn't get to go live in the promised land. She was defeated in 2010. As you know, the Democrats lost control of the House because of Obamacare.
We're talking to Richard Miniter. His book is called Leading from Behind, which tells a story of the president and President Obama and the reluctant president and the advisors who decide for him how he operates, and the story about Obamacare, how that came to pass, really should be called Pelosi Care because she's the one that spearheaded the whole thing. The book is published by St. Martin's Press. You have a website too, don't you, Richard?
RichardMiniter.com. You can also follow me on Facebook. I'm very active there on Facebook. There's a fan page for Richard Miniter. There's new material up there a couple times a day.
Miniter.
Yeah, it's like minister without the S.
Gotcha.
Exactly. But one of the other things that's interesting is the role that powerful women play in the Obama administration, especially Valerie Jarrett. It's a very mysterious figure. She's born in Iran to African-American parents, one of whom her father is a medical doctor and a famous researcher on blood diseases. When they first meet, Michelle Obama, Barack Obama, and Valerie Jarrett, they meet at this cafe in Chicago, La Loupe Cafe. It's a wolf-themed French cafe. And Valerie Jarrett and Barack Obama begin talking. They have a lot in common. They spent a lot of time living outside the United States as children. And they lived in Muslim-majority countries. Valerie Jarrett lived in Iran, and Barack Obama had lived in Indonesia. And yet here they were, black Americans living abroad in Muslim-majority countries. And they kind of looked down at most Americans because they said, most Americans don't even have passports. Now, whenever liberals say that, remember, until 9/11, you could go to California, you could go to Canada, Mexico, and most parts of the Caribbean and South America with a driver's license. You didn't need a passport to travel inside most of our hemisphere until 9/11. So that whole one-liner is kind of mean-spirited, and it's sort of condescending. But Valerie Jarrett comes from a wealthy, powerful, connected Chicago African-American family. Her mother's father was the first black graduate at MIT. Her father was teaching at the University of Chicago, so she had, was sort of the golden gateway to power and status and prestige in Chicago. And Barack and Michelle very much wanted to be her friend, and they form a unique partnership. And now we get to the point where after 1991, every significant job that Michelle Obama was to hold after that was at the behest of Valerie Jarrett. It was either working for Valerie Jarrett or at an outfit where Valerie Jarrett had substantial control, where she was able to get those high-paying jobs for Michelle. And also Barack Obama's career is greatly steered by Valerie Jarrett. Now look at the New York Times in 2009. A reporter from the New York Times on the record asked President Obama what Valerie Jarrett's role is. And the president tells the New York Times, "I never make an important decision without talking to her first." And he goes on to say that he talks to her 2 to 3 times a day. Now, I was wondering, that sounds like a lot of time for the President of the United States to spend with one advisor. So I looked at White House visitors logs. This is going to keep track of everyone who comes in the door at the White House, as you know. In the first 2 years of the Obama administration, when the country and the president is hunting bin Laden, there's only 9 meetings in the White House between the CIA director and the president. 9 meetings in 2 years. Meanwhile, he talks to Valerie Jarrett 3 times a day. She's the only presidential advisor to go on vacation with the first family. I mean, can you imagine, Henry Kissinger going on vacation with Richard Nixon, or Karl Rove going on vacation with George W. Bush? I don't think Laura would allow that one. But Valerie Jarrett is so close that she's so influential. And, of course, in the book, I say how she was able to cancel the bin Laden raid 3 times.
Well, we're out of time. Thank you, Richard, that's very fascinating. Wish we had more time to go into that. I would like to talk about that more. Maybe we'll have you on again sometime real soon. We appreciate
Happy
it.
to come back anytime.
Okay. Richard Miniter, Miniter. His book is called Leading from Behind.
Fascinating read.
Our program is over, and David Jeremiah's Bible teaching program is straight ahead. Turning Point. We'll see you back here next time.